Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the potential for an outbreak of thunderstorms across parts of the UK during the next 48 hours or so in quite a lot of detail, looking at where, when and why these storms might occur. But as usual, we're going to start off by looking at the overall weather setup, and you can see here, this is on the GFS model by the way, and this is the chart for 6 o'clock this evening, so a couple of hours ago now. But we have high pressure to the north and east of the UK, and then we have low pressure to the west of the UK and Ireland right there. And the wind direction at the surface is slightly southeasterly across most of the UK, and that's actually going to push a fairly warm and humid air mass into southern and southeastern regions overnight, as you can see there. And so by 12 o'clock midday tomorrow, we have that 15 degree temperature at 850 hectopascals, which is roughly equivalent to 1.5 kilometers above the ground. And so that's indicating we've got a fairly warm and quite humid and also quite unstable air mass across eastern areas. Also note, however, we do have two kind of subtle lows, one just to the south of us there, and then also we have this one just to the west of Ireland, which is associated with a kind of elongated frontal zone. And that's going to be pushing generally eastwards over the next 24 hours or so. And then notice by Monday we have a much larger area of low pressure, not particularly strong, but in terms of area it's larger, and that's going to be part of the breakdown from the warm air to the more fresh air. And as that breakdown occurs, we're going to see a combination of lift and instability, which is going to give rise to potentially quite widespread thunderstorms sometime between Sunday and into Monday. Also, it's going to be fairly warm. Just thought I'd mention that. We're likely to see temperatures into the high 20s tomorrow. A very, very small chance of 30 degrees, I personally think that's not likely to happen. But for September, not too bad. You can see 27, 28 across parts of central southern England there. However, the temperatures are not the focus of this video, the thunderstorms are, and we're going to take a look at the up-level air pattern to kind of give you an idea of the lift, this kind of situation with what disturbances we have, what's going to create the forcing for these storms to develop. And we'll look at a couple of things. This is the 500 millibar wind chart. A reminder, 500 millibars is around 6 kilometers high, 6 kilometers above the surface, so almost in the middle of the atmosphere, and it's generally pretty good for showing those at larger scale systems. And what you can see here, this is the chart for tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning. You can see we've got a fairly big system here up to the north, but then we have an extension of slightly smaller systems just to the south, a smaller low there and a smaller low there. And in fact, you can actually already see those two lows kind of spinning. If we look at the water vapor satellite imagery, I'll put the link for this in the description. You can see there's our little swirl with low number 1. There's low number 2 embedded somewhere in here. And then what's going to happen is on the eastern side of that, if I just go back to that chart, we're pulling in the air from the south through the mid-levels, and that's going to drag in a much more humid air mass. So if we go back on this chart, you can see where we've got those whites, greens and blues, that's where we've got a lot of humid air pushing into us. And of course, humidity and heat often leads to instability, and in this case we do have instability. And actually, if we look at the satellite imagery on windy.com, you can already see we have a large area of thunderstorms just in the Bay of Biscay there, and also now starting to see thunderstorms develop over parts of northwestern France ahead of that kind of low, which we'll look at now. So that's the kind of evolution for now. But then notice what happens as we go through Sunday into Monday, and that is that the much larger system then actually does weaken a little bit, but it then kind of extends south enough that it pushes into the UK, and now we're under the influence of a more significant upper level system with more forcing, and that allows a chance for more widespread thunderstorms. And you can see by kind of late on Monday that system is fully pushed through now, so all of the unstable air, as we mentioned, is now off to the east. So by this point the thunderstorm threat will be over, but it's this transition, like usual, that's going to lead to the thunderstorms. Now there's something slightly unique about this setup which could make it more significant than usual, and that is the kind of orientation of the upper level features. This is the vorticity chart, which is the fancy word for kind of spinning motion in the mid-levels of the air, 500 millibars once again. But this is generally a pretty good indicator for where we're going to see vertical motion. And actually you can kind of also, again, see where those systems are. Actually, let me change the colour of this to black so you can see better. But if we run through this loop, what I want you to notice is that we have this big system out to the west, and then we have multiple smaller systems as well, and those are going to move northwards into the UK, and each one of those is going to create the chance for some thunderstorms. It's going to create vertical motion and really allow multiple rounds of storms to move through during the course of Sunday into Monday. And I'll just play through that now. You can see there's one possible disturbance currently located just in the Bay of Biscay. That's going to be one that's possibly could bring storms tomorrow morning. Look at that more in detail. And that's going to move north into parts of southern Scotland by the evening. And then the next one which moves through is this one around here, kind of moves in like that, and then we get another disturbance during Monday, the early hours into the late morning and then afternoon further north, and that's possibly going to be the biggest round of storms which we're going to see. But this kind of setup where the trough is orientated of quite north to south allows fairly long duration thunderstorm events, because we kind of get repeated rounds with these disturbances. So that's why there's potentially quite a long period where we've got the forcing, we've got the air rising, and so we're going to get potentially thunderstorms. But of course the other thing that's dependent on is instability, and there's not loads and loads of instability, but it looks like there should be just enough. And if I run you through the European model, you can see here this is the most unstable cape, so that includes elevated instability, and you can see starting off tonight it's mainly confined to the continent, and because we've got that easterly wind direction it's not extending that far north, but as the wind direction changes with those lows approaching to more of a southerly direction, it starts to make its way inland into the UK. And I mean by Sunday afternoon evening, quite high values across the east and southeast, but the kind of focus in my opinion will be across eastern England into northern England overnight, where we've got that big system pushing through. Let me just go through, show you what I mean. There's our big system pushing through, and a lot of vertical motion ahead of it where the vorticity is being advected. In this region here, the wind is pushing the vorticity, and that's creating vertical motion. And so where that combines with this plume of instability, that's where I think we're going to see fairly significant thunderstorms. And if we take a look at some model soundings here, you can see a fairly decent amount of elevated instability. Of course, the surface is stable, so these storms are not going to be surface-based, obviously, but you can see quite a large area between the white dashed line and the red line, and so any storms that do form are likely to be pretty active. Also note the profile is not saturated. That often helps with the increasing the lightning activity. And then in terms of shear, a fair amount of cloud layer shear, but a lot of that is focused in the kind of 0 to 1 kilometer layer, which is actually where there's no instability. So there's a lot of shear here. The clouds will not be using that because the clouds will be from this point above. And so if you look at the cloud layer shear, it's 15 knots. So not particularly high, but because the cape is high, it's possible storms will organise into multi-cells, maybe even an MCS, but kind of too early to say in terms of the details. And then you can see that plume of instability moves north, and then by Monday afternoon, it's kind of cleared the UK. In terms of what we're looking at with kind of thunderstorms where and when, so I mentioned earlier, with this low right here, we could potentially see enough vertical motion that we get storms developing in this zone in the red and then pushing northwards into southern England or southern Wales overnight tonight and into early tomorrow morning. One model that does have this is the arpège model, and I'll show you here. This is the French model, and you can see it actually develops a complex of storms actually a bit further to the east. That pushes north into, actually also have a few storms across Wales and the southwest, but the also main complex of storms is across kind of parts of the southeast here during tomorrow morning. Now there are a couple questions regarding this. There might not be actually enough instability to get those storms kind of sustained. If I show you the chart here, you can see, I mean, maybe there could be enough, but I mean, especially further west where the better forcing is, you're not looking at a lot. So you'd have to get storms forming in this region here and then moving northeast, which is possible. But if we look at the vorticity chart, the best kind of disturbance is further west. So I'm not particularly sold on storms tonight, and actually quite a few models, for example, the UKV, if I show right here, the UKV shows really nothing. And so, I mean, it's hard to say. Elevated thunderstorms are always particularly uncertain, but the chance of storms tonight is lower, and also we can't quite say where it will be. But I would watch the satellite and radar across France, because it's possible this complex will bring a risk to the east, southeast, and also it's possible any storms here bring a risk to the southwest, but this risk is considered relatively low for now. Now the main risk, which models are much more agreeing on, sorry my mouse is a bit broken there, is later on Sunday into Monday. So potentially the storms, we could see storms in the south during the day on Sunday. Also any storm complexes which are already existing but are harder to forecast may continue to the north. But notice what happens on the model overnight. We have large clusters of storms originating over the south and then moving north and expanding during Monday morning, using up that instability. And that's got fairly good confidence in the models right now. You can see this is the icon showing outbreaks of storms interacting with that instability plume, starting on Sunday late and then going into Monday. And so in terms of area, currently, I mean, it's quite hard to say, but the best combination of the instability here and the forcing here, well, let me just show you, move forward a bit. The forcing here is in this region that I've just highlighted here. So this is the main area to watch from around kind of 3 o'clock on Sunday into around maybe 12 o'clock on Monday. But like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty on what could occur. If I show you the UKV model further on, you can actually see nothing really develops during the day on Sunday. And I'm not particularly sure if I agree with this, because if we look at the upper air pattern, you can see that actually already by kind of 8 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then into 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we have this disturbance here, which is going to move north, and then we have another disturbance later on. But eventually the UKV does actually produce an outbreak of thunderstorms further west maybe than other models, but still in this general region here. So definitely things have the potential to be fairly intense. Instability, like I mentioned, it's not insane, but it's pretty high, especially in the high-res models like the Arone. You can see it shows a fairly significant amount. Some questions with the extent, to be honest, but I'd assume that anywhere in the plume of moist air has a chance of seeing storms, and there's likely to be at least some degree of elevated instability. And in terms of lift, quite a large area will see a fair amount of it, especially overnight Sunday into Monday. And typically when you get the combination of enough instability and fairly large areas seeing lift, you do often get these kind of larger scale thunderstorm outbreaks. But like I said, it is quite hard to say, and there is also a lot of disagreement. For example, if I show you the previous UKV run, that had a thunderstorm outbreak much further east. So really, it's too early to say exactly which areas. We know the general area, and we know the general timing, which is number one, possibly tonight and tomorrow morning across these two areas, but the chance is low. And then the number two, the second risk area, is likely to be from around 3 o'clock tomorrow to 12 o'clock on Monday, and that's going to be in this sort of region here. Likely to see smaller complexes of storms originating across the south and then growing larger as they move north, perhaps becoming fairly organised across parts of eastern England. But I will either make more videos or put a detailed forecast on my website and Twitter when we have better confidence. But for now, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.